Welcome everyone to the show. Welcome. It's another fabulous Tuesday night. I am your host, as always, Maximo. I use pronouns he, him, his, and I'm super excited tonight, as I've mentioned to everyone, because we have another phenomenal show. How do we keep producing all of these banger shows? I don't know. I tell them to DM Gylon A Jackson. He'll give you all the secrets and the tricks on how we continue to produce this show. But welcome to Maximo Show. We're probably about almost 40 episodes into this show. Wow. And we've been producing them week after week, time after time. We just continue to bring out these hits. We've got a lot of things to talk about, so I'm going to jump right in. We've got an amazing person in front of us right now, a self-described Chicana single mother with an amazing vinyl collection. And so I want to get into that. But welcome to the show, Dr. Lori B. Rodriguez. Lori, how you doing?
I'm doing very well. Thank you.
Thank you for coming tonight. Hey, you got a great jacket on with those pins. You got to give me the breakdown. What's up with those pins, and how come our people love pins and buttons and stickers that have these signs and these symbols on them, you know, because we get behind that, right? Like, our people love wearing that loud and proud, and we wear them to the conferences and on our book bags. What's up with that? Tell us what you got there.
Well, thanks for asking about these pins, Maximo. No, so I have two of them were given to me by former students, Mexican American Studies students in my class. One is it's what is it, Mayo, Raza Unida. The other one is Mujeres por la Raza Unida, and then one is Amalia Ortiz. I purchased that one myself from her. And the other one is I Heart San Anto, which is San Anto Cultural Arts.
Right on.
Yeah, so they're just like, you know, pins that have been given or I really like. And, you know, I wear them with pride.
There you go. Shout out to all the peeps we're uplifting. Shout out to anybody watching. If you're watching right now, give us a comment, like, share, comment, subscribe, all of that good stuff. Let us know where you're watching from. I'm excited to be here today. We have Dr. Lori B. Rodriguez, who is a PhD in Latino literature. She teaches Mexican American Studies at Palo Alto College, and you do a lot. You know, one of the things I've always been impressed with is your all's Heritage Month celebration that lasts 45, 60 days, and it blends you know, our Mexican, our Latino, our Puerto Rican, all of our heritage in with our indigenous heritage, which is always a theme at the table here, because being in South Texas, you know, our indigeneity is often erased. And we've got people like yourself and many others who have laid the framework to say, wait a minute, hold on now. We've got some other stories to tell here. So come on up to the mic and tell us a little bit more about, you know, maybe your thoughts on that. I mean, you know, how you lead in your position and you know, that framework.
Yeah, so thanks. Yeah, you made it seem like we're doing fiesta with like how long, like it keeps going on and on and on. It's like pre-Latinx, post, no. Yeah, so I feel very grateful to be able to do what I love, teaching Mexican American Studies at Palo Alto. I love Palo Alto College, born and raised on the South Side, so I feel like it's an honor and a privilege to be able to serve students who, you know, were like me, you know, first generation from the South Side. And our Latinx Heritage Month, which just recently became finally changed to Latinx to move away from the Hispanic. I feel like that's something that is a little bit of a win. But yeah, we try to just really honor and have a really critical dialogue about issues that are important to our, you know, Chicano, Chicana, Chicanx, Latinx, Mexican American, right? Even Hispanic, right? In South Texas, we love that term. So we really do a lot of work to bring some really I feel like really important people who are doing important work to, you know, really push issues, you know, racial justice issues, social justice issues within the context of Latinx studies. So I'm really proud of the work that I inherited from Juan Tejeda before me. He was the person that, you know, set the groundwork and really pushed for the indigenous focus, which I think is really important that we do when we celebrate, you know, Latinx heritage.
Yeah, and shout out to some of these titans as well, because I know I'm going to see them this weekend at one of the largest Dia de los Muertos festivals in the country. Juan will be there. Amalia, I believe, is performing. Mm-hmm. There's several celebrations this weekend. This weekend's huge. They got like a big beer and wine festival. I mean, there's all sorts of stuff happening.
Los Lobos,
as you know,
are going to be there right here.
Los Lobos are headlining on Saturday night.
Gosh, I saw them. Have a great story.
Those guys are icons. What's your story on them?
You want to hear the story?
Yeah, let's hear it.
Oh my gosh. So I'm always like, trying to tell people this story. I tell my students this story, and they're just like, they're all young, and they're like, they don't know Luis Valdez or Los Lobos. So I had this Latinx Heritage Month celebration at PAC. We got Luis Valdez to come and speak, and it was amazing. And that was on a Thursday. And then just to prep, I was listening to a lot of, the soundtrack of La Bamba and, Los Lobos. And I just started getting all, hype. And I was like, when are Los Lobos, are they touring? And then it just so happened they were at Green Hall the next Friday night. And I was like, and it was sold out. And I was like, I asked a friend of mine if she would go. And she was like, well, I'm not feeling up to it. And I was like, you know what, I'm going to go. And so it was the next day, and I went, and I remember I was so tired from the Luis Valdez event, and he had signed, of course I had my poster and, my La Bamba, DVD. He signed it, and everything was still in the car. And this is true story. I was just like, you know what, I'm going to go, and I'm just going to go and see if I can get in. And it's like Los Lobos. It's someone's got to be scalping tickets, or I can get in somehow.
Just
right?
get in, yeah.
It's in Green Hall. It's Los Lobos. When am I going to see this again? With Luis Valdez was just here in La Bamba. They did the soundtrack. So I went, and I remember I was stalking, just walking around and trying to get the eye contact. And then there was I forgot who it was. He plays saxophone. But it was one of their musicians, and I was like, excuse me. And I told him, I'm trying to get in to see Los Lobos. Do you know, where they're going to be coming in? Maybe I can, get him to sign something. And I told him my story, I teach about at the college. I teach Mexican-American studies. I teach Los Lobos in my Mexican-American Fine Arts Appreciation class. I'm a huge fan. And I told him about, Luis Valdez just visited. And then his story was, he was real quiet, and he's like, meet me in the front. And then, so I was like, cool. So then he goes to the front. He gives me a VIP pass.
Ooh.
And he, lets me come in. And then I'm right in the back. And I don't know if anybody's been to Green, but the backstage of Green is just a tiny little, it's just, the side of the stage. And there was the ice chest. And it was Los Lobos ice chest. And then he's like, yeah, do you want a beer? You want anything? And I was like, no. And I was like, am I really drinking from Los Lobos ice chest? Right backstage. And then it was just, the most amazing concert. And then get this, afterwards, he was like, you can come to the back, and they have those little bed and breakfasts. So that's where they were staying, in the little cottage back there. And I got to hang out with Los Lobos, and we took pictures, and they signed my stuff, and it just worked out that I was just like, how did this happen? So it was just it was an amazing.
The Chicano gods were in your favor that night.
It was so amazing. It was so amazing. So I tell, when I tell that story to my students, they're younger and they don't appreciate how amazing Los Lobos are, or La Bamba. Some of them have never seen La Bamba.
That's what I'm
or
saying.
Don't know
Oh
Luis
my gosh,
Valdez.
come on now.
And so I have to teach them this is amazing, Chicano art. And so it was a really great. It was a great night. Yeah.
Shout out to all of that, because I was, and again, Luis Valdez, the godfather of Chicano Teatro, directed, produced. Did he write La Bamba as well? That is the quintessential, I guess you can call it Chicano or American classic. That's prerequisite viewing, folks. If you've never seen that film, you've got to watch that film.
Yeah.
Also, one of the saddest films. I think when I was a kid watching that show, I just could break down and cry at the end.
Yes.
Richie!
Yeah, you can't hear, Sleepwalk without, it's that song at the end where it's So, La Bamba. And I tell myself, who hasn't seen, and I have them raise their hand. I'm like, okay, these are things you have to at least be familiar with when you teach Mexican-American Fine Arts Appreciation. That's fine art right there, Mexican-American Fine Art.
So real quick, you breached the topic and I want to go there. What do you think about the term Latinx?
Latinx. Well, we've had panels, we have discussions, about this term. I think it's, for me, I think I have an aversion to the term Hispanic. That's me. So I think this is a lot better than Hispanic. It actually shifts the focus from Spain and Europe, which is where Hispanic comes from, and at least brings it to Latin America, right? So it's a little bit more, geographically, focused, right? Where at least we're it's Latin America. But I think Latinx is, it's a very umbrella term. So it's good for unity, inclusion, right? For being seen by the dominant Anglo society who, maybe doesn't, appreciate, understand, right? So we can show this beauty and diversity in being Latinx, but at the same time, it's a very broad term, And so I feel like I identify as Chicana, Tejana Chicana, because I'm very there's the geographic, specificity of identity, which I think is also very empowering, right? So we need to appreciate our very unique, differences, but then also, celebrate the similarities as, Latinx people. And I know there's this pushback where in Spanish, how do you say the X? And so now there's Latine, where, we do have the, gender neutral, term where it's also English Spanish. So it's a little bit more, I guess, it's easier linguistically to be able to transition with that term, because I know a lot of people are pushing back against the X in Spanish. Spanish speaking people are saying, well, that's not Spanish, but it's an English term. It's well, yeah, it did come from the US, right? So it's a US term, and so the X, right, now has become, so it's very interesting how language and identity are so fluid and intertwined. So now the Latine, if people choose to say that in Spanish, you have that gender inclusivity and also linguistic inclusivity. So.
It's a big tent of the familia, right?
Yeah, I know, it's a lot.
We don't always agree. We don't, see eye to eye. We don't.
Yep.
We're talking about, a rich, huge panoply of people, that have different beliefs and ideologies from everything
Privilege.
From absolutely skin color, right? We talked about racial justice earlier.
Mm-hmm.
It's complicated.
It's very complicated.
But one of the things, though, is that many people that live in the Southwest, there is a movement of people like yourselves that have dedicated themselves to teaching this thing and teaching it the right way to students and schools. I feel like, once you are in this, because it's almost like a brotherhood or sisterhood of people that teach Mexican American studies, right?
Yeah.
And there's pushback from this even being taught in the schools as well. We've talked about in Texas, there are laws being passed currently to prevent this from being taught. You would think in institutions of higher learning, many of who claim to be liberal education or some sort of liberal ideology, that they would be able to teach this stuff. But why the threat?
Why the threat? Yeah, it's a really good question. So, one of the first things that happens when I teach my students, specifically in Mexican American studies, we start, looking at these histories of, segregation, really, really harsh histories of racism and segregation. And my students, majority will always ask, why are we not taught this in K through 12? They always feel robbed. Why didn't they tell us this? Why have they been telling us a different story than what is, an accurate story, which an accurate story is all sides, of the story, right? Let you come up with your own conclusion. So they're well, they're not telling us the whole other side. And a lot of students were why did we think that Mexico came to steal the Alamo?
Oh my God.
And it's they didn't blatantly say it, but it's or maybe some did, but I don't know. But it's this, it's the way things are taught. It's, centering, this, a certain, right, perspective, right? It's who's going to write history, right? The people who can and who have control over, writing and teaching that history. And so my students are always, questioning, and I tell them, if you have this knowledge, right, that's power. If you know where you come from and you take pride in your own history and your belongingness here, right, especially as Indigenous people, right, people who were here first, right, before, we had the, immigration of Europeans, right, we were Indigenous people here, right, and that includes many Mexican Americans, right, of Indigenous heritage. So they're okay, well then if you privilege that, then what does that make them, right? Yeah. Then that kind of, complicates things when it's easier to just, have this other narrative so that, the people in power can stay in power, basically.
Yeah. One of the other areas that draws attraction to me is, again, many different, camps, so to speak here. I don't know if you saw or got a chance to see the exhibit that's at the San Antonio Museum of Art right now, La Malinche.
I'm going to go see it this Saturday. I'm excited.
Yeah. And, consider the mother of all Mexicans, an indigenous woman who was taken as a slave by Hernan Cortez and became the first mother of modern Mexican people, right? Yeah. Which is a deep thing. And it's interesting because in some circles, I mean, it's almost as if she's considered like a traitor. It even says that on the poster that describes this exhibit. And it's like, well, wait a minute, she was a slave. She was taken as a slave, as many indigenous people were during colonization, imperialism, people coming in, ships and horses and swords and things of that nature, disease. I mean, I think part of it is that, this isn't a very nice story to tell white folks, to make them feel more uncomfortable in this country when there's a time of reckoning, which it seems like there's more and more of this happening, these days. Yeah.
No, I'm super excited to go see that exhibit. I teach this in my Intro to Mexican American Studies class, and I try and highlight the women in history that have always been erased. So we have a lot of really strong, mujeres, mexicanas, proto-chicanas, I call them, right? Before the term chicana, was, used, I think there are these women that have been doing this, this work. And La Malinche is a very, Malintzin, right? Her different names too. It's like, the story is so rich. And I tell my students, like, I would love to see, a book, a movie, like there's not enough done on her story. And unfortunately, because of, the history of, our patriarchal history, you have, how many, stories are written about Cortez or about all the conquistadores, right? They're all like, they're covered, but you have like this woman, it's like, there's very little written about her. There's nothing. Basically, very little, and so it's like, what's her story? Hers is like, I want to hear her story,
not how,
of survival.
exactly.
And, like going from, and she, interestingly enough, she was sold into slavery by her own family. And so, that's another layer of like, she was betrayed by her own people into slavery, right? Because, they were empires too, right? You had nations and empires, and you had, trades, and unfortunately young women were being traded. And I asked my students, think about it, she was, 15 at the time, I think around 15 when she was traded or, given, as an object, to Cortez. And I tell them, what do you think, women at that age were traded for? When they'd win wars, okay, here's your like reward, like these young women were being traded. So no telling what she had seen or what kind, what I mean? Like where she had been traded several times already. So, I think it's, we need to go really deep, and we can only imagine, the kind of story that she's survived through. But to be able to like look more like Moctezuma in his eye, like you don't, like it was punishable by death to make eye contact if you were not given permission. And she was like talking to him with authority on behalf of, right, the, Cortez. But also, Moctezuma and the Aztecs had many enemies.
Yeah.
They were not like, it's like, she's like, these are not people that I want to defend, right? She was helping to bring down an empire that many people were like, like the one of the main reasons people blame, right, her, La Malinche, but really he made a lot of allies with the enemies of the Aztecs. And they're the ones that were helping, right? He couldn't have done it by himself with the limited, people that he brought. So there were a lot of other elements in that, takeover. And so I don't think she's to blame. I think she was not, like she was a slave. What was she going to do? And it just so happened that she was born into nobility. So she knew, she was very linguistically advanced, and she knew the noble language, right, that was spoken when you're supposed to be negotiating with someone like the emperor, right, because she had that privilege. But then she was sold into slavery, right? And so her story is very interesting because, from privilege, then sold into slavery. And then, these Spaniards, come, it's like, okay, now like, you're supposed to just, do what you're told because now you're, with these, new people.
These strange new people,
strange
exactly.
people, like who, right? And then she learned Spanish, very quickly because she's adept at language. And so like they were able to translate very easily, right? Because of that. So, I mean, it's her privilege. It was privilege. It was betrayal. It was, I mean, a really hard life, I'm sure. And so I don't know, for me to say that she's a traitor, it's like, well,
I didn't like that. And to me, and again, we're dropping some jewels right now, folks. If you're watching, give us a comment, give us a like, share this. Google some of these people that we're talking about. La Malinali, La Bamba, if you haven't seen it, folks. Again, prerequisite viewing, Luis Valdez. Speaking of this, though, and again, there's a lot of different topics we want to talk about. One of the things you mentioned as well is, you hadn't said this, but you become an outspoken advocate against domestic violence.
Yes.
And when you see this traitor as it's depicted of her, it's like, okay, she's being blamed. It's the misogyny, it's the sexism, it's the hatred of women that we have. It begs the question, is this misogyny that we learned, is it a European thing? We've heard about, a matriarchal society of Native people in our indigenous, roots that we had in this country, in this continent, long before colonization, hundreds and thousands and millions of years ago, but, women that have the opportunity to bring life into this world. I mean, how is it that there is this misogyny, this hatred, the violence against women in all of its shapes and forms? We think of sexual abuse, we think of human trafficking, physical violence. I mean, how is it that women continuously get this end of the stick?
Wow, that's a very heavy question. Well, I think, this is it's a really difficult question, but one thing that I do think is that there is this element in patriarchy that fears the power of women and has always tried to silence and marginalize and delegitimize anything that is female or that has the power of the feminine. And I really do think, I know that women, the term chinguana comes to mind. Like, I know so many chinguanas, and it's like, we are we're strong, women in general, right? And then I think about indigenous women and, women of color. It's like, man, the things that we've endured, I don't know. I really admire, our women who continue to struggle and succeed. And I have seen firsthand how these systems, right, that are put in place that just basically, they don't privilege women, they privilege men. It basically keeps women silent and, ashamed, and it's always their fault. And sadly, it's something that, like I said, I've seen firsthand through domestic violence and how it's treated. And the systems themselves are very flawed. I can go into a lot of detail, but, like the conviction rates here in Bexar County, if anybody hasn't done the research, are very eye-opening, just how few men who commit domestic violence are convicted in Bexar County. And that sends a big message, right? And it's not like their cases, like my case, wasn't a gray area where people like to think, oh, he said, she said, and really was it, did he really hit her, and I've heard that so much, and going through it firsthand where it was like no questions, I almost died. It was, a felony level, this person was intent on killing me. And to see that they get through the system with, probation, no charge, no conviction, and it's like, no, the evidence is there. It's all there. How is it that these people, just get away with it? It's like, it's because I think the perception of domestic violence is that, it's still that, that belief that, well, what happens, in that relationship, well, that's not our business, that's like, you stay out of it. And if a man wants to do that, well, that's his prerogative because that's his relation, that's his woman.
Jeez.
Right. And that's like ownership still. And so I feel like that's a big part of it, is this idea of ownership. It goes back to La Malinche, right? Like, she was literally owned, right? And so that's rooted in this idea that women are possessions, women don't have power, don't have control, and just, I think it's this really intentional suppression women's power and agency.
You think about the term power, because power means a lot of different things, but there are active forces all around us that are working to secure that power. We talk about it's election season. You know, there's a vote coming up in Texas, throughout the country, where big, you know, changes could potentially happen or stay in place. There are active forces to suppress votes as well from people. And they've gotten in our heads to tell us our votes didn't matter, our votes didn't count. And so some of our people will go to the polls and some will not.
Yeah.
What do you got to say to some of those people that may be interested and maybe not in voting?
Well, I believe that, because of when I teach Mexican American studies, a big part of what I teach is our history, Mexican American history. And I teach my students, if there has been so much effort to suppress and take away something, like your education, right? Your language, your voting rights, that says something, right? If they're trying that hard to not let you do something, that should tell you that that's power that they don't want you to have, right? And so, you know, registering to vote, voting, becoming educated on the issues, that is something that has not been given to us. It's been something that's been actively suppressed through poll taxes, through literacy tests, right? Gerrymandering, like they're going to do their best to not get you to vote. And so I feel like at the very least, you know, getting educated and voting is, you know, you're doing what you should be doing to honor the people who have been fighting so hard so that we can have that right as a basic right. And the things that are getting passed are getting pretty scary as far as, especially here in Texas. I can say that.
And the people we are electing to these positions, right? I mean, we got, you know, on one side, any Tom, Dick, and Harry that wants to put their name in front of the banner and get elected because we got a people that want to maintain the power. So it's anybody who wants to get in there. Hey, as long as you're going to keep the status quo, we'll elect you.
Yeah.
You know, and it's, you know, people said Texas is a non-voting state. I've heard that. And if we can get people to get out there and vote and continue to push that, maybe we can make some of those changes happen.
Yeah, hopefully.
It's an uphill battle, but I mean, we got to get in there and fight. Because, you know, many of our people are like, hey, why the hell am I going to go vote anyway? Yeah. Right?
Yeah.
Many of our people, right? Our brothers, our sisters, our cousins, like, what? Like, come on.
There's a saying that says, people say that I'm not into politics, but politics are always into you.
Oh, yeah. Oh,
yeah. So, you know, if you're going to be passive, you know, then, you know, you're not going to have, you know, that silence is also a vote.
Yeah. You might not want to have a seat at the table, but your ass might be on the menu.
Yeah, exactly.
Right? And so some other folks we've just welcomed to the table. We've got the Untamable show, Indigenous, the Individual Warrior Within, coming up Saturday, November 12th. We got to thank Amanda and Becky for joining us. My gosh, y'all look fabulous too, by the way. If I didn't know any better, I'd know you. I might think you're into fashion.
There you go. Well, thank you for having us tonight, Maximo.
Yeah.
This is our first podcast and certainly our first one with you. So thanks for having us here. And yeah, we're very excited about our upcoming show.
Yeah, we're going to hear a little bit more about it, and we're doing kind of a mixed roundtable here. We got a great show. Don't go anywhere, folks. The show is just getting started. We've got an amazing performance coming up in about 20 minutes. So please give this a share. Tell all your family and friends. Get with us on your comments. We're going to answer your live comments on air. But I want to get over to the fashion show, because what I've read is that here, Amanda, you and Becky do sustainable fashion meets the runway. Yes. And with Native American Heritage Month coming up here in a few days, you all have a show that has an indigenous theme. Also, proceeds to the show are going to go to American Indians in Texas at the Spanish colonial missions, a portion of the proceeds. And so we've got to thank you for your contribution there. What's got y'all into this work? Philanthropy,
well, we've
fashion.
Already decided that we're nuts, so let's just preface the whole conversation with that.
There's nothing wrong with that. We're all mad here.
We're all mad here. Becky and I have been friends for over 20 years. We've been in sustainable fashion for a long time and doing fashion shows and all kinds of collaborations. And just recently we started Untamable, the sustainable fashion show series. So this is number 2 of our activation series for the city, for the community. It's a philanthropic initiative and a community collaborative with artists, and local designers. So we want to bring some philanthropy to the runway.
and as well some education about what it means to be in sustainable fashion, and that sustainable fashion can be very fashionable.
Yeah, that's true too. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So what do you mean, for our viewers that don't know, and I need to get educated on this as well, so enlighten me. What does sustainable fashion even mean? I'd like to hear that broken down from you all.
Well, I think Amanda's more eloquent than I, but to kick it off, I would say that it's not about fast fashion. I'm sure that many of us have heard about fast fashion, fashion that's made quickly. It may be made unethically, in poor working conditions, made cheaply, and it's literally meant to be worn and thrown away. Wear it 1 week, toss
Jeez.
it. Even the fabrics that some of these fashions are made out of, you can't even recycle them into like rugs or anything. Anything that they just can't even be recycled. So they're made unethically, and they cannot be recycled. So we're trying to eliminate usage of that while preserving all the beautiful fashions and techniques and just gorgeous things that are already out there. We don't need all this new stuff. There's plenty of beautiful things that we can reuse, rework, repurpose in imaginative ways to create new things of beauty. So that's kind of what Amanda and I are about.
That's it right there.
Yeah, that's important, because you all mentioned ethically. I mean, let's be honest, man. There is a lot of people that are being exploited to make a lot of the clothes that we proudly wear and boast about how much they cost, right?
Right.
I mean, my gosh. I mean, in many of the countries that we talk about, where we celebrate Heritage Month, Hispanic Heritage Month, and many of these clothing items are being produced by children,
Exactly.
being paid very little money for their work. I mean, how is that even legal?
Exactly. That's what we're trying to find out. So part of the show and the mission brings a lot of activism as well. So we partnered in the beginning with the Human Rights Campaign and House of Hope in Ukraine and Texas Fashion Industry for their sustainable programs to bring awareness to avoid and stop the discrimination, the harsh working conditions, the human trafficking, and things of that nature. So we want to bring that to the forefront, because there is a dark side to fashion, and a lot of people don't understand what that means and what that's about. So that's a very passionate side that I have, and that's what this is
like
about.
a documentary that needs
That's
to
what
be
this
made.
is all about.
Yeah. Well, gosh, Amanda, tell them about how many gallons of water it takes to make a T-shirt.
Oh gosh, like 900,000 gallons of water. It's a ridiculous amount, and the landfills are just so overconsumed, and the emissions in the air, and it's causing such a disruption with our water quality and our air quality that people just don't realize what's happening with just clothing alone.
Yeah, well, that's great that y'all are bringing awareness to this, because I think, there's the term ignorant has a negative cachet, but literally it just means that people don't know, right? And so
Right.
to bring the awareness and bring it to light is what we need, right?
Yes.
I think if some people knew better, they would do better. Now, maybe not everybody, but at least we can get the information out there.
Yes.
And as they say, there's more than one way to bake a cake. You mentioned the term racial justice, ethics. This all has a part, right? We can all do our part, whether it's, how we, purchase our clothing, going to a community college, right? Rather than taking out millions of dollars in student loans, right?
Seems like it.
I mean, these are things that I think that if it isn't this generation, it's the next generation needs to get woke and hip to.
Absolutely.
Yes.
What is there to say about some of these things? I mean, what are the trends that are moving forward in some of these areas? I think, we hear about thrift shopping and bargain shopping.
Right.
You all mentioned you can find very nice clothes that way.
Absolutely. That's absolutely a part of the awareness that we're trying to bring as well, to the fast fashion versus the slow fashion. And that you don't have to spend hundreds and thousands of dollars on clothes just to be popular or be in. You can style your looks in sustainable attire. Yes, it is second hand, but it's just as good. It's actually better quality, much better, well made.
Yeah.
It's been around 60 years. It's gonna last another 100.
Yes.
It's very easy. So it's just educating people. But it seems like the younger generation are very accepting to what we do. They like vintage clothes. They want to see our style. They want to see ways to bring it to life. And that's what Becky and I have. We have that eye to try to show people how to bring these things to life.
And we're not just talking about the kids. There's a lot of older adults.
Yeah, there is. There is.
that could stand to take a word from our book and promote sustainable fashion and wear sustainable fashion. So.
Yeah. So give us some tips. I mean, what do we need to know? I mean, how can we get snazzier here next week on the show?
Well,
for our viewers that are watching right now, they want some fashion tips.
Well, you're kind of, you got to realize like who you're talking to. Maybe when you see one of our shows, it'll make more sense. But Amanda and I are kind of the more,
coming to the show, right?
We're the more is more people. We kind of like a little more. We like a little like pattern on pattern or texture and pattern or multiple accessories versus like one. If one ring's good, 4 rings are better. If one belt's good, 3 belts are better. That kind of thing. Color, we love color.
Yeah.
And, sometimes the thing that is what one more person might see as the flaw in the sustainable piece that you're looking at, we might look at it and go, oh my God, we could use that as a focal point. We'll put a pin over here and we'll put a belt over there and we just play with your clothes, play dress up, go in there and remix stuff and just work with it. And don't buy stuff off the rack. Make it your personal style, create.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's important because fashion is, and how people wear their clothes is it's extension of who they are. It's an expression, right?
Yeah. It is.
I mean, many of our people are very fashion forward, or they take pride in how they dress. I mean, where do you think that comes from? I mean, what do you think, Lori? I mean,
I guess it's just how you want people to perceive you, right? I mean, when you put your clothes on, it's different because some days I'm like, I have different days.
yeah.
Yes. We all do.
And different moods and but I know like for me fashion wise, I know that my thing is always earrings. And
we see that.
Yeah, you got some fabulous earrings on right now.
I love
Look at those earrings.
And it's just like, and I've literally like gone like almost halfway and like to where I'm going. I'm like, oh, I forgot my earrings. It's like, nope, I have to go
Turn
back.
around.
Like, nope, I gotta go get my earrings. I can't be without my earrings. So for me, like, like that's my like fashion piece that I feel like for whatever reason, like that's me, is my earrings. And I always, I people ask me, where'd you get those earrings? And I'm like, where did I get these? Oh, was at a market? Like, and it's usually because, it's a market where somebody like, it was made by them and they're always like unique or like authentically beaded. I try and like find quality in, things like, my earrings because I know that somebody made them and they weren't just like, made wherever, they're unique. And so I always get compliments on my earrings because they are unique because I do buy them from people who, put the work in and I pay them for that work because I feel like that's, it's also people making their own art, And so, and I love thrifting and I love Mission Flea Market. Like those are my, I live in those places. Those are my happy places. So,
Lori, you brought up a good point, and I think it's something that Amanda and I definitely try to do in our shows and with our clients, is to tell your story, tell a story. Again, that goes back to authenticity and really putting who you are out there. And I love it that you buy a pair of earrings, the artist you brought them from, where you bought them, what it was you liked about them, where you wore them, all that becomes part of the story. And that's what you get with slow fashion that you don't get with fast fashion. Yeah.
Wow. That's so true. I've had so many, tops that I bought, like it was at a yard sale and like, just unique things that people are like, where'd you get that? I remember even in college and high school, I used to go, thrifting back when there were still like vintage things you could find. Now it's like, it's so hard to find, but they would be like, oh, cool. Where'd you get that t-shirt? And I'd be like, I'm not going to tell them. They're going to go and like find my favorite thrift. It's like, oh, I got it at a store, a thrift store. I don't know. I forgot where, but I remember it was always like, hey, that's really cool. Like, the unique stuff that, that you have to like dig for and find. That's like, and like the older stuff, like that's really cool. Just, like how old is this? Like,
the history
and it's like, and the
it.
quality, like there's so many things that you don't get that quality anymore. That's like a thing of the past.
Out.
Yeah.
It is out.
Yeah.
It's a shame, but it is out.
Yeah. But I mean, I think about like, the richness of how our people have created these patterns and how they've lasted over time, right? You mentioned pattern on pattern. You look at your earrings, they have these rich patterns of, what we know as almost like a Chicano sort of pattern, right? It's indigenous, it's Tejano, it's all of those things, And I know that your all's theme is, the individual warrior within coming up on the 12th. What's in store for us on that day? Like, what do we, if we buy a ticket that day, I mean, what's going to happen up there? Yeah, I understand it's at the, what is it, Estancia del Norte Hotel?
It is.
Yes.
Tell us a little bit about what you have planned for us on the 12th.
It's a secret. You gotta
Oh
buy
my
a
gosh.
ticket.
Well, why should we buy a ticket to all the viewers? I mean, you got to sell the ticket, sell the event.
Well, this is, like I said, our second activation series. And so it's going to be a very fall-winter sustainable show. So a lot of leathers and a lot of fall colors, patterns, beading, fringe,
Feathers.
lots of feathers,
Yes.
and some items that have been made by myself, jewelry that's been upcycled and redesigned by myself, broken pieces that we put together, just a lot of items that we've taken apart, put back together, and we have several actually segments that will be coming up that night, 3 different fashion shows. So a
Wow.
lot of people don't realize they're not just going just for one fashion show and the event's over. There's quite a bit in store for them that day.
Yes. And obviously, we said it in the title. We are inspired by the Native American indigenous people for this show, and we are honoring them through our sponsorship of AIT. Amanda herself is Native American. Some of our models are Native American. And we're just using that rich heritage as a jumping off point for fashion inspiration, with all the respect and love that we have for the Native American people.
Yes.
So
Yeah, that's good.
Absolutely.
yes, trying to be very respectful and honoring.
Yes.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and no, I think viewers, everybody here, we all appreciate that, the term respect, right? Because it's got to be done right. And that's something that our people are very keen to. If something looks off or something looks funny, I tell students and people that I work with, our people they can smell a rat better than pest control. And so, but it's because our people are deeply spiritual, deeply connected people. They're grounded, salt of the earth people. And so if we come correct, it's all good. It's when we come sidestepping
Exactly.
that people start having second guess about the true
Sure.
nature of people, which is why our people are, don't want to go out and vote. Why our people don't want to get involved, or maybe may not want to purchase a ticket, or may say, hey, this guy Maximo's a phony, right? I mean, we hear it all, right? I mean, these are things that we have to consider.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. So we're trying to combine that dialogue of that inspiration with the sustainability. And another thing about Amanda and I, we really like to create an experience. So it isn't that you're just going to show up and sit in a chair and see fashion go down the runway. You're going to feel it. I'm going to say you could probably, I don't know if you're going to smell it. Maybe they'll probably smell
all
it.
of it. All of it.
But we like to
Immersive.
create an immersive experience that's maybe a little bit different than other shows that you might see.
It looks like that. I've seen the website, the Eventbrite. I'm looking forward to being there. I mean, it looks like there's heavy hors d'oeuvres or something like that. I like to eat. I like the calories, so
Yeah, open bar. all that
open
good
bar as well.
Yeah.
Where's this?
Okay,
I'll give you a flyer.
exactly. So Saturday, November 12th, 6 to 10 p.m. Where can folks find out more information about this at?
We are on Facebook, on Untamable, and on Instagram, Untamable-SATX.
Okay.
That's where they can find us. And the QR code here, maybe you can show that up.
Yeah. Yeah.
So we've got little flyers here.
The QR code to buy tickets. We're on Eventbrite, and the link is in the bio.
Yeah, I'm excited. It looks good. And you all are not new to this. You all have been doing this for some time.
I changed it to 5 decades.
Okay.
We had 50 years, and I was like,
That just sounds
so it's 5 decades now. I forgot to tell her.
of experience between the two of us.
Between the two, we have 5 decades
five
of
decades
experience.
of experience in
So, yeah.
styling. Yes. So
5 decades. It sounds decadent.
I like that, Maximo. I like that. We're decadent.
Go
So I
with it.
study the adjective section all day of the, of words before I come on the show, so I can have all of these fabulous and
words.
phenomenal and right, because you got to have that, right? I mean,
Yeah.
so who's involved in the program? I mean, do you have anybody else coming that's going to be speaking? I mean, do you have any, maybe honorable mentions, celebs that are going to be there?
Well,
Maybe you.
Yeah, we're going to come through.
You know?
We're definitely going to come through because I like what y'all are doing. I like the proceeds. I like the
Appreciate that.
philanthropic aspect of it. And it could just be in the show. There's a lot of shows, right? There's a lot of fashion shows out there.
There is.
Yes, there
But
is.
And this is
very
not the same.
special. No,
Correct. This is different.
We're different. And we usually get back to 2 or 3 beneficiaries. So it is AIT and a Ferrari Kid, which
Ferrari
helps,
Kid.
Yes, which is also a local 501c3, which helps children with cancer. And so we are donating to them as well.
Very nice.
Both of these beneficiaries. So we're happy to get back.
Yeah. It's
So
very
the
nice.
founder will be there for that to speak. And I believe Ramon with AIT will be there as well.
Okay.
And we've invited some city people's officials. We'll see who shows up. Who
Yes.
comes.
We do have a special sponsor, Lone Star
Yes, we have
Bank.
Lone Star Bank as
Yes.
one of our sponsors. And what else do we have? All kinds of things happening.
It looks like there's going to be a lot of fireworks happening, a lot of
There's gonna be a lot
surprises.
going on.
A lot of
going on.
surprises.
Yes.
So I'm looking forward to being there.
Yes.
There's a lot of, and here's one of the other things as well is that this show is bigger than San Antonio, but I feel like a lot of times when we have viewers who watch from Philly, from Michigan, from the West Coast, Arizona, they chime in and they say, because we have a lot of people from San Antonio, they say, wow, San Antonio's got a lot of talent. And we do have a lot of talent, as you know, from the arts world, from, business leaders, community, people that are moving and shaking. There's talent all over the place. And you all are a part of that cloth, right? That what do we call that? The blanket,
Fabric?
the fabric,
Fabric,
yeah,
yes.
the quilt.
The
The
fabric,
quilt.
if you will.
The fabric.
The sustainable fabric.
Exactly, right? The sustainable fabric. It can't just be any fabric. But, you all are speaking to that, and doing the work of having events, of, educating people and being on the front line and cutting edge of doing this work. So hats off to all of y'all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
For doing this work. So it's exciting. Lori, do you have anything else coming up in the future? Any future events that you'd like to promote maybe other than your class? How do we get into your class?
Palo Alto College, enroll, not just at Palo Alto College, but I would say ethnic studies classes in general. I teach Mexican American studies. Of course, that's my area of interest. But I would really urge people to, if you're enrolling in college, take ethnic studies. I would ask people when you're going to vote to make sure that you're voting in people who are for ethnic studies, for an accurate representation of our history. I think our students deserve that. That's what really makes, critical thinkers and, the people that we need to really be, knowledgeable to be able to move this country forward in the way that it needs to move forward.
Yeah.
So I would just really advocate for, people who are for teachers, for ethnic studies, to vote those people in, because I think our children, our future deserve that.
Yeah, we got a lot of work to do, but in Bexar County right now, which is the predominant county that San Antonio sits in, early vote is happening. Early vote started yesterday.
Yep. It'll
be happening in the next 2 weeks. There's been some laws and rule changes, but get out there, get educated, find where you need to vote at, DM us, ask us if you need any help, assistance. We can get Rise to the Polls, all that stuff. We've got about 30 seconds left. I want to hear about your vinyl collection and what you're coveting. I got to know, what do you like about the vinyl?
What do I like about the vinyl? What's not to like about vinyl? It's, it's classic.
Exactly.
It's rare. It's
retro.
Retro. There's nothing sounds, it's like the other sound, is like vinyl. Listening to, an original song on vinyl is just amazing. And so, I have a pretty good collection. I've been it's been years that I've been collecting, and I do play it. I have a really nice turntable and
Sweet.
Nice, vintage setup. So that's kind of my thing. That's like, mommy's toys that you don't touch.
I already know. Don't touch.
Yeah. So I have a lot of classic rock, classic country. Those are my areas, and
Badass. Well, thank you all so much for being here.
Thanks for having us.
We are not going anywhere just yet, folks. I want to introduce everyone our final closing performance of the night. We have introducing in the next room, Miss Destiny Marie Hernandez for your viewing pleasure. Enjoy, folks. Thank you. Thank you, Destiny, so much for your performance. Come on up and join me here. Welcome. We've got to welcome everyone. Amazing performance that we just had from Destiny. Marie Hernandez. Destiny, thank you so much for being with us.
Good evening, all my relations. Yes, I'm catching my breath. I wanted to greet you in our native tongue, which is Pahalate. I think it's important to recognize the first language of this land. And I built this altar as, there's a lot of symbolism here. We are very intentional people. We do things with meaning and purpose. And since we are approaching Dia de los Muertos, this is also a holiday that indigenous people of Mexico, Mexico, Texas, we celebrated this. We're always honoring our ancestors and remembering them. And so during this time, a lot of us have home altars. Some people do it all year round where they have a home altar that they always, at least myself, speaking for myself, I have a home altar that is something that grounds me. It brings me back to my place, to my alignment, to my sacred energy whenever we're going through trials and tribulations in life. And it's good to remember that. So I like to be connected to that, especially when I'm doing this type of dance, because this dance has meaning. And this is a fancy shawl dance, which is symbolism in the powwow circles. It's symbolism for the butterfly. And it's the story of the metamorphosis, right? And so a lot of us go through that in our lives where we make alchemy. We go through things and we create beautiful things out of that, like a butterfly. And so that's what the shawl represents, the wings. And it's also a symbolism of feminism in the powwow circles as well. So, yeah, mujer fuerte.
Hey, and she definitely turned it out. You definitely had a great performance. Talk to me a little bit about the song.
Yes.
The song that we do not own the rights to.
We don't.
But you picked this song. Tell me about what the song meant to you.
I did. Shout out to DJ Shub and Black Lodge Singers because I love this album. If you're listening, DJ Shub, right now, I love you. But yeah, I just wanted to give him a shout out and the Black Lodge Singers because that's another thing too, right? Is recognizing who created the music and making sure that we're acknowledging that. And yes, so all credit to that. And this is a crow hop. The rhythm of the dance is to represent how a crow would dance, or they also call it the jumping dance in the powwow circles as well, which is a secondary dance. But anyways, the music called me, you know. I, like I said earlier, I'm very intentional about things, and once something calls me, I listen, and I go that way. So this piece has been something that I've been thinking about for a while. And yeah, it's all connected with the altar, this time of year, being in the regalia, the full regalia, and our regalia is also very symbolic too. It's a representative of our land. The colors that I'm wearing are representative of the medicine wheel ceremony, which is the first ceremony that I've ever attended. And so, the deer, the mesquite is from this land as well. It's called samin in our language. Sorry, I pulled the mic away.
It's all good. It's all good.
I can go on and on, okay? So
that's what we do.
I don't know how much time we have left.
We have a few minutes. Keep going.
What else?
So talk as well about, this time. You talked about this season, a time of change.
Yes.
We mentioned tonight is also what with the moon?
Oh my gosh, the solar eclipse. Woo! The solar eclipse is today, okay? Tonight, And so this is a very transformative time too. I'm so happy you brought that up because I was thinking about that intentionally as I was building this altar too, right? Because transforming is it's so powerful. And being intentional with that, again, the word intentional comes up because we have to be intentional. And something that you and I were talking about earlier this week is like what we listen to, what type of music we listen to, what kind of words are we
Internalizing.
Yes, exactly. And reading and just all of that. You have to be mindful about it, as well as how you speak. Earlier, I was telling Gylon, I was like, I don't want to lose my shoe while I'm dancing. I don't want the feather to drop. And then I tell him, I'm like, why am I saying what I don't want? I need to say what I want. So then I reversed it, and I'm like, my shoe will stay on. And it did, yay! My moccasin. Yes.
Yeah, well, you did fabulous. Thank you so much.
Thank
we
you.
want to bring everybody into the picture. Come on in. What a great show. Thank you so much for joining us here at the Maximo Show, VodPod Media. It's just another fabulous Tuesday. Thank you so much for being with us, folks. Anybody got any closing words for the good of the order? Thank you all for being here. Hey, but another great show. Shout out to Gylon Jackson for making it all happen. VodPod Media Studios. Stay tuned for the San Pluto Show at 8:30 Central. And that's it, folks. Take it home. Hey.